Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar entitled Discovering the Side of the Sports Psychologist. As you know, when it comes to psychology, we mostly think of clinical psychologists or the net cognitive psychologist, but on this spectrum, it's quite different, which is a sports psychologist. We'll dive deeper into what that means and what it's all about. But before we introduce our guest, I would like to introduce our program leader, Miss Aina, to the stage.
Hi, thank you, Aiman. Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second psychology webinar for this year. Last time we invited a clinical psychologist, but this time, since we want to introduce to you a new profession, a new professional, so we bring in a sports psychologist this time. Oh yeah, first of all, for those who don't know me, especially to our new intake students, our foundation students, my name is Miss Aina and I'm the program leader for psychology. I would like to thank everyone for attending this session, especially to our guest speaker, Miss Huning. Thank you, Miss Huning, for allocating your time to speak to our students. And I really hope that your sharing session can inspire my students to have better understanding of your profession as a sports psychologist. Yeah, but maybe who knows, they might follow your footsteps in the future. And yeah, for everyone's information, the idea of inviting this guest speaker is to give our students some sort of real world touch and career exposure. Yeah, because I don't want you to have only what we call this theoretical understanding only, but also I want you to have some sort of industrial exposures as well. And I am sure if you're going to attend our lectures, 14-week lectures, 14-week tutorial with Miss Aina, with Miss Chan, Mr. Jackie, Mr. Jeff only, you might feel bored, right? So that's why we bring in some industrial speakers outside, practitioners to speak to you and to share their knowledge as well. So I think that's all. On behalf of my school, the School of Marketing and Management, APU, once again, thank you, Miss Ning, for your willingness to be with us today. And to my students, please grab this opportunity to gain insight, to equip yourself with knowledge and skills needed for your future career. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy your session. Okay, back to you, Aiman.
Thank you, Miss Aina. Okay, so before I introduce Miss Huning, I just want to give a quick background about what she's currently doing. So basically, she's a sports psychologist. She managed her degree in Health University, and after that, she went to Leeds Beckett University in United Kingdom, where she completed her master's degree in sports psychology. Okay, without further ado, let's introduce Miss Huning. Hi, Miss.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Aiman. Thank you, Aina, for the warm welcome. So, everyone, good morning. So, it's nice to meet all of you. So, you can call me Ning. So, I'm here today to just share with you a bit about the career pathways of being to become a sports psychologist. So, hopefully that all of you can take something away from this to these sessions today. Okay, so let's get into it. I'll just pull up my slides. Okay, great. Okay, so just to like quickly get into it, yeah. So um, just representing my supervisor's firm. So I'll be presenting on behalf of the firm to share with you a bit more about this field. So into the world of high performance. And why do I say high performance? Because as the sports psychologist, there will be a lot of engagement with athletes, um, with professionals who are all experiencing a performance-based field. So to engage in their own sports. Okay, so let's get into it. Just a quick introduction about me. So Aiman has pretty much summed it up really well. So um, I graduated quite some time ago for my bachelor's in about 4 years ago. And just this year, actually, I actually graduated from my master's in psychology of sport and exercise. So came back from the UK and now currently I'm training as a sport and exercise psychologist. So I'm currently attached to an esports team, Mobile Legends specifically, if some of you might know. All right, so 4 years ago, actually, I think just going back a bit. So 4 years ago, I also did my internship at the sports psychology department in the Malaysian National Sports Institute, or Institute Sukan Negara. Yeah, and that's what got me into sports psychology, actually. Just that experience itself gave me so much wow, and like a lot of so much interest. So currently, just a bit about myself. I think my hobbies are is quite obviously sports lah. That's why I'm also in this field. So I do a lot of hiking, I do a lot of running, badminton, swimming, all kinds. And on the side, I also like to read. I like to blog. Okay, so just some interaction. So let's make this a bit more interactive and not just one-way communication. So not just me talking, but hopefully everyone here can put in a bit of input and see what kind of things that you can think about, and let's try to make a conversation and give the ball to you. So in here, there is a Mentimeter link, or I've also created a QR code to the Menti link. So if all of you can access that, then we can, then we can try to like get some answers from questions that I'll be asking. Okay, yeah, the links in the chat as well on the live stream. So on Facebook, YouTube. Okay, right. Oops. Okay, so first question, like if you see on the Menti link, right, just it's a very open question. Anyone can answer. Feel free to answer anything that comes to your mind. It's any words or any sentences. So first question is, what do you know about sports psychology? Right. Very general question. So anything comes to mind. It doesn't have to be a full-on textbook general definition, but something that you think about first when you hear this term. Oh, okay. I see some answers coming in. All right. So physical exercise. Okay, helping athletes. Okay. Oh man, I wish you guys can see this. So we have like well-being of athletes, managing athletes, endurance, mental health. Okay, very good answer. Body, helping athletes. Okay, physical exercise. Okay, athletes' well-being. Very good. Pain tolerance. Okay, chocolate. Well, it might help for some athletes. Food. Okay, self-doubt. Wow, okay, that's a lot of answers here. Wow, keep it coming, guys. So TikTok performance, it's very exclusive. Okay, performance anxiety. Okay, motivating, aiding in sports persons. Okay, it's for the athlete. Okay, motivation, yeah. Okay, mindset. Okay, happy. Okay, all right. So okay, so I see here like the main one that is popping out right now on my screen. It's helping athletes. So that's like a lot of you have been like the first word that comes to your mind when you think about sports psychology is helping athletes. Yeah, and in a way, yes, it's correct. We do help athletes. So to put it nicely, we do support athletes to help them to prepare them mentally as they go in for training or as they go in for competitions. So thank you everyone for taking part in this. Okay, but keep the link, yeah. So we'll be using this link as we go on. All right. So right. So just to sum up, I think all of you have summed it up really nicely. So a lot of answers, fantastic answers from all of you. So to put it simply, it is sport and exercise psychology, the broad general term, is a study of the relationship between psychology and sports. So it's how we relate the study of our thoughts, actions, and behaviors, and how we can relate it back to sports performance, development, athletic well-being. So it's such a broad range, right? So it's not just like, okay, we're going there, okay, we help the athletes to perform. Okay, so there are various different like branches of sport and within sport and exercise psychology itself. So it can just be very performance focused. So you're helping the athletes to perform at their very best, their optimal performance state, we would say. Development focus. So you can also support the athletes as they go through their development in the sport. So from a young age all the way up to elite level. And also this one's more on the exercise part of the sport and exercise psychology. So it is also behavior change focused. So lots of it is maybe helping someone to stick to their exercise routine, getting someone to begin exercising for the sake of their health. So it's very diverse. So it's not just like one thing. It's not just performance, but it can also be developmental focus, behavior change focus, or well-being focus, lifestyle focus. Right. So it's very interrelated. So psychology and how we interact with sport and physical activity. Okay. So right. So yeah. So if you want to know like specifically like as a sport and exercise psychologist, so from here on I'm just gonna say S&E psychologist. Yeah. So it's our role is actually very diverse, as I've mentioned. So, but the main pillars that a sport and exercise psychology should and would be practicing is, of course, firstly, if you see the first picture with the word evidence there, it's very evidence-based practice. So, as with other social sciences, as with other uh, fields of psychology like counseling, clinical psychology, forensic psychology, because our practice, of course, must be based on evidence and evidence and where to get evidence. I think it's very obvious. We can get it from research articles, we can get it from conferences. So all of these findings that um, academicians or practitioners they have um, publish papers on certain topics, and we used what the findings are, and we modify it and apply it in our own practice. Okay, and the next one, if you see this guy like on the chair in the gym, okay, so we can also another part of it is also we can help athletes to cope with their injuries. So as they go through recovery, we are also supporting athletes as they go through recovery. So um, I'm sure maybe some of you have experienced a sport injury before, and if you recall those moments, it can be quite excruciating. It can be quite frustrating as you recover and you can't do your sport, especially if you're training for a competition. So our role is to be able to support the athletes as they go through the recovery period. Okay, so next one, if you see like that four people fist bumping picture, right? So a sports psychologist role is not individual, it's not independent. So there are lots of moments that we engage work and collaborate with different experts in different fields. So for example, when I say multidisciplinary team, it would mean that it's not just the sports psychologist supporting the athletes, but there are also moments where we collaborate with, like, let's say, the nutritionist, or let's say the biomechanist, or the physiotherapist. So for different areas of the athletes' performance and training. So this can be seen quite a lot, especially if you're working in a high performance sports setting. For example, like the ISET, National Sports Institute. So lots of times there will be lots of collaborations between different different experts in different fields for the athlete, for them to perform at their very best. Okay, and also another side of it is we are also working with the coach, we're working with the management, if let's say an athlete is attached to an organization. So lots of times um, we have to collaborate a lot to discuss what's the next best step for the athlete to take. Okay, next, number 4. Okay, so there is that little mind map thing, where we talk about research. Okay, so research is also another thing in as a sport and exercise psychologist that you can venture into if you're into research, into academia. You're fully focused as an academician also. So lots of research in various theories, various concepts in sports psychology, in exercise psychology, or behavior change if you're more into the exercise part of it. And using all the findings that are found in the research, it can really benefit this community itself in their practice with athletes. Okay. And finally, okay, with the big word there, culture. Okay, so it's just being culturally competent to work with athletes. So athletes can be regardless of team, whether they are individual sport athletes or team athletes, and regardless of their age, ethnicity, beliefs, values, orientation. So yeah, as a psychologist, a sport and exercise psychologist, it should be within our field of being inclusive. Right, so next. Okay, so next question. So, do you know what it takes to be a sport and exercise psychologist? So, talked a bit about the roles of a sport and exercise psychologist, right? And also what the sport psychology generally encompass. So, let's talk a bit about how you yourself can venture into this field, like all of us have done, like all practitioners, psychologists have gone through. Okay. Right. So there is no one way to become a sport and exercise psychologist. Just put it simply, there is no one like true path. Like if you want to be a doctor, you have to go through like your bachelor's degree, like your MBBS, 5 years of study medicine, then go up to be a houseman for 2 years, then only you can become a qualified like full-time doctor, right? So as a sport and exercise psychologist, it's a bit different. So there is like a branch. So it branches out. So let's say, of course, the first thing you need to go through is, of course, your bachelor's. So your bachelor's either in psychology, or it can also be in sports science if you are into sports science. Or I think like some other unis also they offer sports psychology, but currently I'm not too sure if there is one in Malaysia. Then afterwards, that's where you progress on to your master's. So a master's in sport and exercise psychology. So there are various places where this is offered. So I'll share it a bit in the next few slides. Okay. So after your master's, okay, so these two are like your basics. This is where your foundation will be built. And this is where all your basic psychology knowledge will be built also. So after your master's, this is where your roots will branch out. So we have the academic route. So if you're into like research and you want to like do your PhD, so the academic route is something that you might be interested to take on. Or alternatively, there is also the practitioner route, which I am going for. So practitioner route meaning is that you work directly with the athlete. So you're very applied based. So you're using that. If we go back to the first few slides, the evidence-based practice. So we're using like findings that we can see from research papers, and we apply that and also use that in our own professional practice with athletes. So we're working very closely with athletes. Okay, so in the process of these both routes, so there'll be some years of practice, some years of supervision, and that is where afterwards, once you've achieved those qualifications and accreditations, that's where you become a sports and exercise psychologist. So, okay, I'll just move on. If any of you have any questions, you can pop it later in the chat or the Menti link at the end. All right. So next, okay, so going back to where you can pursue this course, right? So I've mentioned before, like in the previous slide here. Okay, so there are a couple of routes that we can take, right? And the masters that we have, the postgraduate route that we have to go through. So which is the masters. Okay, so just to put into context, this is like more on the masters and PhD route. So for our bachelors, a lot of times that you there are various courses like psychology is pretty broad, pretty general in Malaysia itself already. Okay, so for the master's, a postgraduate route. Okay, so for me, I've went to the UK, right? So I've taken my master's there for 1 year. So in the UK, the master's is 1 year long. It's very theory based. It can be very fast paced. So yeah, everything is included in like masters is like your theory, your research, your classes, yeah, and also maybe a small, very small component of like giving you the opportunity to practice in, let's say, like a practicum module. So that is what my uni offered. So in Leeds Beckett, so there is a module that we call it practicum and a professional practice where we get the opportunity to work with students from different fields of sports science, and then we try to come up with a hypothetical case study, and also a practical module where we directly engage with athletes to create like a psychology session with them. Okay, so that's 1 year of intense studying in the UK. Whereas if there are also others courses where there is a bit more balance in terms of learning the theories, learning the concepts, and also the practical component of it. So that's why I put as 2 to 6 years, because and for I'm not sure if like for other countries, I think for other countries there in the PhD routes, there are also opportunities for you to practice alongside studying your like doing your research for PhD. Okay, so just a few countries down there. So it's like United States is one. So the US is where you can do the fast track route for PhD. You can do, for example, like maybe 4 years, but so it's a master's and PhD combined. So the US is pretty like special in this case. So they have this like fast track route that you can do your PhD and your master's at the same time. So doing your research at the same time, you also have like the practical component of it to practice and engage with athletes. Australia, or Malaysia even. So Malaysia, there are master's courses out there and PhD courses out there focused on sports psychology in places like USM, UM. Okay, so I encourage you all to do a bit of a research yourself, also to find out more, because the information I gave could be outdated, because I did my research also a couple of months back, so maybe it might have changed afterwards. So yeah, I encourage all of you to do your research a bit, just to find out a bit about these places if you are interested to pursue this field. Okay, right. So I'm going to focus a bit about the practitioner route. So the practitioner route, okay, so accreditation. So what is accreditation? So accreditation is given by a professional body. So after you fulfill certain requirements, a certain criteria, and engaging in certain levels of supervision, certain levels of practice, that's how you get, um, that's how you are able to qualify for the title of the sports psychologist. So it's important because we want to maintain a certain high level of standard of care for clients. So you can see this especially in like positions like clinical psychologists, counselors. They have to go through accreditation before they have the right to use the license to consider themselves a clinical psych or a counselor, right? So same thing for sports psychologists, right? Especially in other countries like Western countries, uh, there are uh, there are professional bodies taking care of this title, so they call it a protected title as a sport and exercise psychologist. Okay, so we have bodies like the Australian Psychology Society, we have American Psychological Association, British Psychology Society, and so all these are like very big bodies, and I'm sure some of you have heard of it. So like APA, for example, that's where you use your citations, right? So huge bodies, professional bodies, taking care of the profession to ensure the practice is carried out ethically, the practice is carried out professionally by professionals. Okay, and also there is another body that I'll also be talking about quite into specific detail because it's more relevant to, like, let's say for us Malaysians, to practice as a sport and exercise psychologist. Oh, it is called the ISSP, so the International Society of Sport Psychology. Okay, so what this body does, okay, it's pretty much the same as other professional bodies, but it is specifically focused on ISS, like on sports psychology. Sorry, so it is because realistically speaking, in Malaysia we do not have a professional body taking care of sports psychology, the professional title. So we do not have one body specifically taking care of this accreditation. So one thing that my supervisor has been pushing for also is to make sure that in the future we can see more psychologists, sports psychologists especially, practicing professionally and ethically in Malaysia itself. Okay, so this is for practitioners, sports psychology practitioners who are interested to get accredited. Yeah, so there in this accreditation itself, just to roughly like talk about it. Yeah, so there's like two different routes. So one, you have the emerging route, so it's like for for people like me, so who's just graduated, who just wanted to start out the career as a sports psychologist, just figuring out the next steps. So yeah, so you can take this route just to get more interaction, more practice as a psychologist, sport psychology trainee. Okay, and there's also another established routes for practitioners who have been out there in the field working for years, 5 years, 8 years, and who's looking also to get accredited, so by this international professional body. And there are certain requirements, for example, like finishing a master's degree first, and also completing a modules provided by this body, and also a minimum of the minimum hours of supervised practice. So you'll be working along with a supervisor that has been accredited by ISSP, and that is where that's where you work towards your goal of becoming a accredited sport and exercise psychology, which I am also currently doing. Yeah. So if you want to find out more about this, I encourage you to go on the website to find out more about this accreditation, just to see what's needed, what it takes to become accredited. Okay, so I've posted the link here. So issponline.org. Yes, yeah, just check it out if you're free. Or alternatively, you can always Google like International Society of Sports Psychology. Okay. All right, let's go back to the Menti slides. Yeah, just one more question, and one more question of squeezing your brain juice for a bit. Okay. Okay, so yeah. Okay, I'm going to pass the ball back to all of you here. So, what do you think are some of the challenges and ethical issues that a sport and exercise psychologist might encounter in their practice? Okay, so we talked a lot about like the roots, like going into becoming a sports psychologist. So imagine yourself like already like a graduator and just starting out your career, just like starting to work with your first sports team. Just imagine like, okay, in the field, like you're practicing. Okay, I'm just saying this from the perspective of a practitioner, yeah, not an academician. But also, if you also have like certain ideas about some challenges that an academician may face, yeah, please feel free to put it in also. So the question is, let me repeat. The question is, what kind of challenges or ethical issues that you think a sport and exercise psychologist might face in practice? Okay, can be anything. Just like it's just a free for all open question. There's no right. There's no wrong. Okay, I'll give you a hint. So some of these challenges can be quite similar to what other psychology fields might be facing. So counselors, clinical psychologists. So some of these challenges, some of these ethical issues can be quite similar. Same but different. Oh, is it the same question? Oh, okay, my bad. All right, let me go down. Oops. There we go. All right, sorry everyone, my bad. Okay, I think you can see this now. Okay, so we see the first thing that pops up. Confidentiality and privacy. Okay, good. Okay, relationship with athletes, problematic athlete behavior. Okay, lack of empathy. Okay, can go more into that a bit later. Multiple relationship, sexual encounters, crossing boundaries. Okay, very general, very typical, but also important to know. Okay, conflict of interest between practitioner athletes. Okay, perhaps there are gender restrictions. Oh, okay. And interested to know more about that if you can like elaborate on that more. Okay, differences in theoretical orientation with other professionals. Okay, yeah, could be a challenge, especially if we're working with other psychologists. Multiple relationships. Okay, yeah, it can be a challenge to juggle between the multiple relationships. Right, so perseverance. Okay, accepting bribes, gifts from the athletes. Right, okay, could be. All right, low self-confidence. All right, so yeah, so if you're like saying more like someone who's just starting out as a psychologist, yes, yeah, maybe they could be also contributing to their practice. Okay, let's see. All right, balancing between an athlete's wishes to continue a sport and prioritizing their health. Yeah, could be because it's also related to their well-being. Lack of trust towards sports psychologists. Okay, this is a big one. It's actually there's a lot of like truth in this also because like there is also that stigma, right? I think it's the stigma of like seeing a psychologist and you're thinking like, oh, I'm crazy or I have something wrong with me. Okay, multicultural diversity. Yes, cultural competency can affect like practice a lot. Competency. Okay, stereotypes about should you maintain a distance with your athlete. Okay, we'll talk more about this one. Yeah, I've also included that in the next slide. So stereotypes about psychologists among athletes, they are not aware of the mental health field. Yes. So they are pretty similar to the lack of trust towards sports psychologists. So just stereotypes of like them be like something is wrong with the athlete and that's why I need to see a psychologist, which is completely not the case. Okay, so conflict of interest between practitioner athletes, multiple relationships. Yep. Okay, low self-confidence. Oops, sorry, I've already been here. Balancing between the athlete's wishes. Okay, yep. Using drugs and stimulants. Okay, yeah, so into doping, right? So doping is also another big field, and there's a lot of research done in that field. Exposing emotional and mental harm. Yep. Okay. Using drugs, drugs. There we go again. Competency dealing athletes from different cultures. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. Okay. There. Yep. Okay. Cool. All right. Thank you, guys. That is some very interesting answers. Okay. So let's go back to the slide. So a lot of it, all of you covered it so well, so beautifully. That what I'm about to share also. So some of these like challenges are what I face in my own practice. So my first few months like with my esports team, yeah. So okay, so lots of things that you have mentioned also like the privacy confidentiality. Okay, that's a given. That's a core ethical consideration to have, right? So what also makes this field a bit different from the other like mental health like professions, like as clinical psychologist or a counselor. Okay, there are lots of gray area. Okay, there are lots and lots of gray area when it comes to like when you say confidentiality and privacy, lots of it. So because there is a need, because let's say we are working under as an organization, right? So for example, we're working with ISN or we're working with the esports team. So it's under an organization. So it's how we balance the privacy and confidentiality of like an athlete. So well, not to say that okay, any personal or private matters that you must share with the organization, no, but anything that is related to, because the organization also wants to know a bit about like some updates and like progress with the athletes. So anything that is a bit that is related to performance that it can be shared, of course with the consent of the athlete. It's very important with the consent of the athlete, then we can exchange information, because this is also for the benefit of the athlete, because sharing this information could help um, stir some discussions, and also to in order to help the athlete to perform better. Okay. Of course, we need to balance it out using our professional judgment to see what is okay to be shared, what is okay not okay to be shared, especially when it comes to things that are a bit more private to the athlete themselves. So so that is where consent comes in as the most important thing. Yeah. All right. And also privacy. So location interaction. So lots of times, I've never experienced this before, but I've heard lots of stories from my supervisor and other professionals. So when they're out for competition with athletes, so let's say the Olympics or let's say Commonwealth, they're in another country and they're maybe in a hotel. Yeah, there's like a lot of instances where like mini sessions or like sessions that can go on with athletes in various locations, because there's no like one fixed place, like let's say private room for both of you to be able to go to. Yeah, there's no we don't have that luxury of just like having a private room to engage with the athlete, to like have a impromptu or like ad hoc session with them. So I mean, there's some instances, yes, but also there's some instances that like sessions can carry out like in places like the hotel room, or the hotel lobby. Okay, so hotel lobby, my bad. So let's say hotel lobby, and maybe the cafeteria or the training room, locker room. Okay, so lots of these places sessions can happen. So it's about how we, again, professional judgment to see where is okay to do it, and the time and place for actually carrying out a session with the athletes, and whether it's crowded, whether how private the the session will be conducted. Okay, so cultural competency. So some of you have already mentioned, put it so well. It is cultural competency and awareness. So it's not just individual beliefs and values. So just being competent in not just like the athlete themselves, like they are, let's say, they are of a certain belief system, come from a certain belief system, practice a certain belief system, certain values that they practice, their personality, okay, or their cultural background, okay, orientation, whatnot, but also the values and beliefs and the culture also of the club or the team that they come from. So let's say if you're like from a rugby team, and the rugby team has their own identity, their own set of cultures and own set of values that the team believes in. So as the sport and exercise psychologist going in there, we will have to adapt to their cultures and their values and see how we can provide the best service for the athletes based on the values that the team has created. Okay. And also competency. So right, very general, very main, but very important one also. So being aware of our level of competency. So be making sure that if let's say if you feel like okay, this is a bit too much to handle and it's something that you can't like it's something beyond your level of practice, like for example it becomes at least it's showing a bit of signs of like uh, very severe depression or eating disorders. So that is when we need to like find or refer the athletes out to other professionals like clinical psychologists to work with them closely on the their condition or the mental illness that they have. Okay, right. And also finally, so responding and reacting to situations quickly. Okay, so a lot of times like as I mentioned before, a lot ad hoc sessions happening, right? So being on the ground, so it's important for a exercise psychologist to be on the ground with the athletes, because that's where we get to see like situations unfold or situations that might happen, and based on our own judgment, based on our own experience, how we pick up on the things that are happening on the ground and how we react to them and very quickly. So maybe let's say for example, I'm just giving an example. So for example, maybe there is a team fight, so an argument that has broke out within let's say a sports team, football team maybe. So as a psychologist, maybe we as our roles, how we can help, either we can help to diffuse the situation or like to see if we can like run debriefs with them after and how to diffuse like the arguments to make sure everybody gets a chance to like voice out and just like not just like keep it in them, keep the argument or keep the resentment within them. So it's just one of the many examples of how things can happen uh, on the dot. So how we can like support the athletes. So it's what makes this job also quite interesting, because you won't know what happens next. So things can just happen, and sometimes it's just beyond our control, beyond the athlete's control. It's how we respond to them and how we take in the situation and process the information as they unfold or after they unfold. All right. So I hope that makes sense. But anyways, all of you have like mentioned it very well also, like everything that you said here. Okay. And finally, okay. Yeah, wow, okay. I think the time just passed by very quickly actually. So yeah, that's it. So just a very brief introduction of like general introduction of what this role as a sport and exercise psychologist um, is about. So we've talked a bit about what sport and exercise psychology is and how that affects our role as practicing as a sport and exercise psychologist. So after that, we also talked a bit about the pathways to becoming one psychologist. So from the academic qualifications that's needed, and then where do we go to pursue this course? So it can either be in Malaysia, yeah, or other countries like UK, US, Australia, and also to talk a bit more about using the protected title as a sport and exercise psychologist. So we talked a lot about the accreditation bit also. And finally, the challenges and ethical considerations of being a sport and exercise psychologist. So all of you have, and thank you all for like engaging in all the questions that were thrown out. Oh, it's not a lot, but it's two questions that maybe might be needed, that maybe you might need to use your brain a bit more on this cloudy, sunny morning. Okay, so yeah, I think just to wrap up, it's just like what we've talked about, what you have also given as a response. So just to wrap up a bit about like how these psychologists work with elite athletes like during the Olympics in 2012. Yeah. So I'm just gonna play this video for a bit. It's a 6 minute long video. Just enjoy. Just like take a chill feel, relax. Just to understand a bit more about this field, like working with uh, elite athletes.
This is a place in the Olympic Park that very few people get to see. It's a dressing room much like any other, white walls, a few benches and coat hooks. But it's in places like this, the nooks and crannies of Olympic venues, the gold medals will be won and lost. This is the inner sanctum, where the last few crucial moments are spent before stepping out into the megawatt light of the competition arena just a few yards down that corridor. It is here that athletes perform the highly secretive routines designed to take them into the zone. Here you will see some truly bizarre things. Some athletes in half trances pacing from foot to foot, others with their eyes closed, visualizing optimum performance. Some athletes enact bizarre superstitions, others offer silent prayers. In many ways, this is one of the most surreal places in sport, but also perhaps one of the most fascinating. Often the final few moments before competition are highly solitary. You're alone with your thoughts or perhaps your demons. But in many sports, solitude is impossible. You're required to spend those final moments not on your own, but right up close with your competitors. And it's here in the dreaded call room that the mind games go into overdrive.
From my perspective, these are the 7 guys that I've got to do battle against, that are trying, standing in my way to achieving my objective of a gold medal.
I never thought it was personal. Like people, I didn't think they were trying to destroy my dreams or they're trying to beat me. They were simply trying to win. I don't own winning. I just wanted to win.
The interesting thing is that champion athletes, top athletes, gold medal athletes, the gold medal mindset, if you like, that type of athlete will not see pressure as a problem. They will perceive it as a privilege.
I quite enjoyed it, actually, because the pressure is so high at that point, all other things being equal. It's the person who handles that moment and the pressure at that particular time best, that's going to have their best performance. There was one competitor, he asked us all, to pray together. I'm not going to pray with you. And most of the guys did it. I didn't do it. I'm not going to do that. I'm about to go to battle.
The brutal irony of elite sport is that however good you are, however many sacrifices you've made, it all counts for nothing if you can't deliver when it really matters. 4 years of preparation for just a few defining moments of action. This is, in many ways, the ultimate sliding doors moment. So the key question is, do the psychological rituals that athletes use in the dressing room and continue to use right out here in the arena actually work? In short, what do we really know about the dark art of performance psychology?
You're already under a tremendous amount of pressure in knowing the significance of the moment, and this is what you've been training for so very long, and this is what you've been preparing for, and it's a dream come true to be there, and now you're just that close.
You will always have an internal voice saying, this is dangerous, run away, run away.
A psychologist would always say you control the controllables. You're not in control of the weather, you're not in control of the opposition, you're not in control of the TV audience or the crowd or the event or that's all beyond you.
You can only control how you perform when the gun goes off.
You narrow it all the way down to something incredibly simple.
Sort of ironic now as I've lost my faith, but my faith, I think, gave me perspective to somehow, to a degree, disassociate myself from the outcome.
You have to do the best you can and then let the chips fall as they may.
I can only be as good as I can be, and when I've crossed the line, I'll see what that got me. That's a very calming, focusing and quite inspiring thought.
Performance psychology is, to a large extent, about the elimination of doubt. In many circumstances, doubt is a rather sensible thing. If someone's trying to flog you an insurance policy, it makes sense to doubt whether what they are saying is true. But in sport, doubt is catastrophic. If you don't believe you're going to nail a forehand or score a penalty, you're almost certain to miss. That's why visualizing a brilliant performance is so important. It can help to eliminate doubt. Superstitions can do the same kind of thing. They provide reassurance and boost self-belief.
superstition is a very interesting phenomenon, particularly in the world of sports psychology, because what we're actually saying is thoughts become things, and what we think affects the way we feel, and the way we feel ultimately affects the way that we behave, and ultimately in the sporting context perform.
A similar kind of thing happens in the field of medicine. A sugar pill with no pharmacology whatsoever can have incredible effects, reducing pain and anxiety, even eliminating nausea, so long as you believe it will. As Jonathan Edwards put it in a slightly different context, any belief can have astonishingly powerful effects, providing it is held with sufficient conviction.
Maybe that's the key here, is you need to find something that works for you. Every athlete is an individual, and you can take out the training manual, you can take out the sports psychology book, and you can say, well, Michael Johnson did this, and Carl Lewis did this, and Muhammad Ali did this, and you can go on and on through the grades, but none of them are who you are, and you have to find your own way.
Delivering under pressure is a rather brutal thing, but also a profoundly subjective one. Many athletes are overcome with nerves, others are afflicted with terrible self-doubt. Is it any wonder that they reach for the particular ritual that makes sense to them, that provides a sense of reassurance and control? Prayer, superstition, visualization, take your pick. What is certain is that minute difference between victory and defeat on the biggest stage of all is often to be found not in skill or effort, but in the recesses of the mind.
Okay, yeah, so I hope all of you enjoyed that video. It's a bit long. Oops. Yep. Okay, so yeah. So I think this video just sums up a lot of things that we've also mentioned, and maybe we've not touched very detailed on. So just to remember that at the end of the day, athletes, they are their own people. They are all their own individuals. So as psychologists also, we need to work with athletes who have very different beliefs, very different like personalities, values. And of course, we need to remember like at the end of the day, yes, performance is very important because we want to like make sure the athlete performs at their very best, being able to deliver under immense pressure. So imagine you're in the Olympics and you want to go for a medal position, right? Out of all the other athletes who are so amazing from all parts of the world. But also we need to remember at the end of the day that athletes are also humans. So to treat athletes as human as such, and that's where we need to know and understand them first, as humans first. Okay. All right. So yeah, thank you so much. So that is the end of our sharing session. So I hope that this is something that helps you to open your eyes. Yeah, help you to open your eyes to things that are happening in the world of sport and exercise psychology, and gives you a bit of background about what my role as a sport and exercise trainee sport and exercise psychology does. So I've already popped in my email here down here. If you have anything, just feel free to reach out to me. And also I popped in my supervisor's email as well. So her name's Dr. Rebecca, if you know her. So lots of experience like working with elite athletes in Malaysia and also China. So feel free to reach out to either one of us if you would like to find out more about this field. Yeah, and if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat, or also I've also opened up the Menti if like you wish to like ask anything. Yeah, so just to say thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you, Miss. It was a wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed the video as well. It was quite intense. But
It's quite
right here
dramatic.
we have two questions. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I'm sure it goes beyond sports, right? Maybe a politician position as well. They have to hype themselves up. But then again,
yeah,
here, right?
totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, if we look at the comment section, there's a few questions that we would like to ask you, okay? Starting from Kiarha Rubinunan.
Okay.
Hold on, eh? Okay. Hi, Miss. My question is, how do you deal with clients who strongly believe superstitions that impede their performance?
Okay. So impede their performance. Okay. So my English is a bit okay, iffy. So let me check like okay, prevent, so obstructing, so making their performance poorer, right? So okay, so far, okay, so far I've not have any experiences of like superstitions working not in favor of their performance, of like athletes' performance. But I just imagine like if something like this were to come up, like let's say, I need to maybe I need to okay, if like let's say to take an extreme example, I need to get drunk first before I actually play well, right? So maybe um this is something that we need to sit down and we need to talk about, like exploring, understanding why, or the reasons why these athletes like engage in that first, because because superstitions are at the end of the day is like your own beliefs, and like that you associate, right? So like in psychology, you just make this like association between something that has happened and to the outcome. So sometimes the correlation is like it's just a coincidence and it's not like causal effect. So it doesn't like means, oh, I do this means this thing happens. So causal and correlation. Yeah. So superstitions that impede their performance, I think like what I would do in that situation, of course, like I've mentioned, just to sit down with the athlete, just talk to the athlete and say, what is the reasons that they believe that this is happening, and helping them understand that there is certain things that may be impeding your performance, like because like alcohol itself, like maybe alcohol itself it's actually very it really affects your performance in terms of your cognition, your physical ability. So trying to understand to the core of it first and understand why they do this first, and from there, like I've said, I mentioned before, it's every athlete has their own beliefs and like their own ways of like thinking about things. So maybe one method or one intervention might work for one athlete, but it might not necessarily work for another athlete because maybe their values or their personality is different. So it's just really have to sit down and just like engage in the discussion session with athletes. There's no one right way. Okay.
Okay, Miss. Thank you for the answer. Yeah, makes sense, right? Okay. So we have another question. Unfortunately, I cannot read because it's in a Mandarin lexicon. Ha. Okay, wait.
Wang Kai
Uh,
Rong. So
okay, yeah.
Kai Rong,
That one.
I hope so. I got
Yeah.
it right.
Hi.
Yeah.
Could you give me an example of when you overcame a difficult challenge
Mm.
in preparing an athlete for competition?
Oh, okay. So I would assume that a difficult challenge would mean myself as a practitioner, right? Yeah. So let's say if it's my own challenge, yeah. So as a practitioner, like my own challenge is that I will also go through immense pressure because like not only because you are working with the athletes for so long and you want to see them to like a part of you also wants to see them win, right? So I think when they are on the stage itself, because I will also have that pressure, and also that pressure of helping them, supporting them in order to win. So I put a lot of pressure on myself in that sense. So how I overcome it is that a lot of work. Also, we do a lot of mindfulness practice, which I gotta admit I'm also still learning and trying to like get better at. So what my supervisor has also been pushing for, which I also really strongly believe that it is the way forward also for athletes, is mindfulness. So doing a lot of mindfulness works to keep the athletes grounded, keep also myself as a practitioner grounded in the here, the present, the now, and not worry about the outcomes, not like let the outcomes pressure you and cause you to lose your focus and concentration in what you need to do, which is to compete. But just focusing on what you need to do now as an athlete. Mm. Yeah, so I think that's that part is still a challenge for me as a practitioner, and also yeah, I think that part of just like helping the athletes to overcome pressure, that is something I find challenging but also very rewarding at the same time to
I
work
see,
support
Miss.
them. Mm.
So this is why we need systematic research in psychology, right? For this kind of
Yes,
thing.
yes. Yes, exactly. Because like lots of evidence base, like a lot of findings out there. It's like how we see like certain things that are done, maybe also case studies like how certain applications and theories have been used, applied, but also how we use them in our own ways to work with our own group of athletes. That works best for them.
Okay, Miss. Thank you for answering that question.
Mm.
I have one. Do sports psychologists need their
Yeah.
own sports psychologists, or is this something that is not familiar?
Okay, interesting question. Good question. I mean, okay, so for me, I mentioned a few times also, I have my own supervisor. So my supervisor, she is also a sports psychologist in the field. So having someone in the field that you can engage with, interact with, also it provides a lot of support lah. So support in terms of like certain like discussions of what to do, like with maybe a certain case or certain athlete. Also not only on the athletes themselves, like what we can do, but also like you as a practitioner yourself, like what kind of like managing our own expectations or managing our own like the challenges that we face during like our own practice. So how we manage that, and that a lot of it also just comes from like taking care of ourselves. So self-care, so this is also important. So yeah, I would definitely say that having your own sports psychologist, but yeah, like just having someone who is like your support system, like in the same field, is very important.
Okay, Miss. Understandable.
Yeah.
How about the next question by Aishwarya? Could you give me a
Yes, sir.
normal advice for the people who wants to have a weight gain or loss by playing sports or gym? How to cope up with mental health while being in that process for a change?
How could you give them? Okay. Ooh, okay. Well, weight gain and loss, that is more on the nutrition side of things already, or sports. So unfortunately, I can't really comment on that much because I'm not practicing as a nutritionist. I don't have that much knowledge on it. But mental health or being in that process for a change. Well, I think just to put it simply, like okay, because Aishwarya, I mean, you are your own person, and you probably have your own ways of seeing things and your own values of maybe why you want to like do certain things, right? But just to put it just like generally, like coping with mental health or being in process, just like um, I would say I'm a big advocate of self-compassion. So like if things don't turn out well, maybe like let's say in a process of, let's say you're maybe you're gaining weight or losing weight, and in the process the progress doesn't seem to go as well, or maybe that suddenly there's a huge gain or a huge drop in your weight, and is, this is when you need to have a just like understand yourself, just like sit down with yourself, just to say, hey, it's change is not linear, training progress is not linear, so it's not a one way up. There are always some ups and downs as you progress. So just being kind to yourself and letting yourself know that it's okay, that it's not all the way up. There's no such thing as perfect in this world. So being kind to yourself in that process really helps a lot as you work towards your goal.
Okay, thank you, Miss, for
Yeah.
that question, for that answer. The next question by Arnold Dougley. Is there any techniques you learned as a sports psychologist that you believe will be a great application in everyday life for non-athletes?
Oh, okay. Good question. Okay. So techniques that I've learned, right? So, like I've mentioned before, actually, mindfulness is a very good technique that I feel like has benefited me not in my practice, but also in my daily life. So, as someone who's like sometimes who experiences like general like maybe a bit more like worry a lot about the day. Maybe I would consider myself a bit more of like the slightly anxious kind of person. Um, so being able to practicing mindfulness and being able to keep ourselves grounded, like what is happening now, what is happening currently, and yeah, so it's just keeping ourselves grounded and not dwell too much in the past, not focus too much in the future. So that is I felt like that one really helped me a lot, because like sometimes I worry about, oh, what's my next step, what is my next step in my career, what is my next step in life, And I see all these people doing so well in life, right? Especially social media, it can be quite toxic, right? So sometimes you see people doing so well in life, then you start comparing. It's like, oh, when will I get there? When will I get there, right? So it's like a lot of times you just need to know that, you know what, everyone has their own timeline, and I'm just taking life and one day at a time, one step at a time. So we focus on each step as we go on. So mindfulness is it's a technique that I've really learned, so that it really helps me a lot in my life.
Thank you, Miss. Good answer.
Yeah.
Next question, okay? By Adeline Han. Who are the athletes that you have worked with?
Who are the athletes? Okay, so who are the athletes that I worked with? Okay, so I've worked so far. To be honest with you, I've only worked with one team, so which is my esports team. Well, I can't say who they are exactly because confidentiality, remember? So a lot. So it's just like working with an esports team, but I find it's very different from traditional sports. So just being comparing my time doing ISN and when National Sports Institute and coming here working at esports. So can see a lot of difference, like the way that the first, of course, the sport that they play. So very different mobile games from their traditional physical like sports. So yeah, it's very different.
Okay, Miss. Moving on to the next question, okay? By
Okay,
Jeremy
sure.
C. Greetings. What are some personal experience that you feel are unique to a sports psychologist, and how has it affected you, motivated, stressed, etc.?
What are some personal experience that I feel are unique? Okay. Okay. So I think just talking to my friends who are counselors, clinical psychologists, right? So I feel like for this role, it's very different because of the amount of interaction that you have with your clients, or this example, your athletes, right? And it's not just you're talking to your athletes, So it's like sometimes you can do it as one person, or you do it as a group together as a team if they are a team sport, or also if they are not only the athletes that you need to talk to, but you also need to talk to the organization. So let's say the management, the coach, in some cases, but so far I've not encountered that yet. So it's talking sometimes to, let's say you're working grassroots level with young athletes, so maybe kids, teenagers, and sometimes you need to talk to your parents also. So there's a lot of like, so this personal experience is like talking to different people within the same field. So one sport is not just one athlete, but it also it has a lot of people surrounding the athletes, and that and for me as someone who is actually a bit more introverted, right? So maybe there are a lot of situations that I really need to step up and just like engage with these different peoples around the athletes' lives, and to help support the athletes even better now. So communication. So one thing I've really learned a lot is communication, like making sure that I communicate things well, not just with the athletes, but also with the management, the coach, and supervisor also. And how and honestly, at certain points, it is quite draining because like the amount of social interactions that you have, right, and amount of like things that you need to engage with the people around the athletes. So it can be quite stressful, especially when it's during competition season, or during like certain days of like training, which is quite bad. But it is like at the end of the day, you just need to go back and ask yourself, like I need to ask yourself okay, what it like this is just all part of the process. So remember like why you're here in the first place, like why do you want to pursue this in the first place. And I think that core belief itself will help me go further to endure all these like challenges, I would call it. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the question, Jeremy.
Okay, Miss.
Mm.
Next one, okay? I'm sorry if we're taking a bit of your time. That's quite a long
No
question.
worries, no worries.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next one by Madeline Alexis Batin. Is there a difference between sports psychology and therapy, since they're in the same field in handling mental issue?
Okay. Well, thanks for the question, Madeline. So yes, I would say there are differences. Okay, so Yes, handling mental issues. So depending on what kind of mental issues. So if it's something that is not clinical, like not too severe, like severe depression, severe anxiety disorders, severe eating disorders. Okay, so this is because as a sports psychologist, we are more trained on like supporting athletes with um, helping them to perform at their very best, okay, and helping them to like develop as grow as people and as athletes. So we're more on the developmental and performance side. So if we want to deal with someone who has like very severe issues that we feel like, again, our competency. So if it's beyond our scope of competency, this is where we need to start to think about referring out to people, because we feel like if this is the best course of action for the athlete's well-being, then we need to do that. So there is a difference. Okay, so therapy is a bit more private, a bit more it's all focused about life. So focus about their own personal life. So for psychology, I would say it uses some therapeutic skills like breathing, all these type of things to help the athlete relax, but not so much about handling mental issues per se. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I
Miss.
guess that was something.
Understandable. Okay, next question by Ahmad. I'm so sorry. Ahmadullah Muhammad Ali. Okay. Have the stereotypes related to psychology ever got in the way of the athlete not wanting to seek help? Interesting question.
Yeah, very interesting question, Amatullah. Thank you for that. Yes, actually, yes, I would say, well, this field itself is not a very big field, so it's a very niche field, very small field also. And there is this stigma around athletes also that they need to, well, according to research, there are some like readings that I've done that says that athletes, there are some athletes who are not, who has like uh, difficulty like for seeking help, because in the world of athletics, the world of like high performance sports, is that you're expected to deliver and perform and seem like strong, right? So a lot of lifestyle things can get in the way of like allowing an athlete to come out and look for help for themselves, because like, let's say it's like, oh, I need to look strong, and I cannot show any weakness, if not maybe coach won't play me, or like I won't get selected for the team. But so if you say like you're a psychologist, maybe they might say that, oh, okay, something is wrong with me, or I have this weakness that I need to work on, and if coach finds out, then maybe they don't want to play me anymore. So of course things are changing now. These are things that have been found like years back, way years, like decades back, but things are changing now because we see more athletes like speaking up about mental health. So for example, in the Olympics, we have Simone Biles, a gymnast, who has spoken up about mental health, and Michael Phelps also, who has spoken up about his depression. So we see things are changing lah. And for stereotypes to exist, yes, they will still exist, of course. And it's really up to us in this field and people in the general psychology community lah. So like how we can encourage people to open up to seek help, and to open up to say, hey, I don't necessarily need to have something wrong with me before I go out and seek help. So a lot of this like falls back on us, like who has study psychology, to raise this awareness among the sports community.
Thank you, Miss. I'm sure high level athletes consider having a sports psychologist, right? Just to have an edge in their game.
Yeah,
But moving
yeah.
on.
Correct.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, like more and more lah. I would say more and more lah. Like even in Malaysia, you can see like, especially the newer one, the emerging ones also. Some of them have also like can see that they are more vocal about having a sports psychologist work with them. Okay. Yeah.
Moving
Thank
on
you.
to the next question by
Yep.
Jerusha Manoj Isaac. What is the most rewarding part of being a sports psychologist?
Okay, that's a good question. So, Risha, thank you for that question. Most rewarding part, I would say, yeah, just seeing the athletes grow. Yeah, I think for me, just seeing like someone grow from like in the beginning stage, whether themselves as a person or with their teams, just seeing them grow together, like win together, but also lose together, but going through the whole process together. That part, I think, is I think that part is very rewarding for me lah.
Okay, miss. Have you ever gotten a shout out by one of the athletes, right? When they won, it's like, oh, I'd like to thank my sports psychologist, this and that, Has that ever happened or
Uh,
no?
well, no, I mean, I've only been attached to them for like this team for like 6 months, so
Okay.
yeah,
Sorry.
not really yet, not yet, maybe
Okay,
not
no
yet.
worries.
See lah, in the future.
Okay. So by Nabila Huda, the next question. Would you mind sharing an experience of how you overcame a difficult challenge in preparing an athlete for a competition?
And I by sharing an experience. Oh, okay. Preparing it. Well, it's quite similar to Kairom's question previously, isn't it? Yeah, like could you give me an example of when you overcame a difficult challenge? Yeah. So it's like pretty similar to the question just like when someone asked already just now. Yeah, so I think just to like put it very shortly is that helping them to prepare like just to be more focused on the present. So just being mindful about things that are happening, and so to in order to help them to worry less about what mistakes they maybe have done on like the future of what the outcome might be. So keeping them grounded, yeah, keeping them mindful.
Okay, miss. We have two more questions. By Kojaja is the first one. If the conflict among the athletes has turned into a bullying case, how would you overcome it?
Okay. I've not experienced this yet, Ditya, but thank you for that hypothetical question because then it's something that I can think about in case it happens, right? So preparing scenarios. So if a conflict among athletes had turned into a bullying case, right? So I think in that situation for me, I would first, of course, try to understand the situation first. From the victim, bullying victim themselves first. Okay, just to understand from their point of view what is happening, what is causing the bullying case to happen, and because a lot of it is just the understanding part of it first, understanding why this is happening, what's happening around it, and of course, discussing if it's severe. If I think it's bullying itself is severe, it's enough already for me to like voice out and speak up to the management or the coach also, because it is affecting it affects bullying affects like the well-being of the athlete, right, as a person also, self-esteem, confidence, everything. So of course I'll also reach out to management and coach to talk about it, and also if it's needed, then because I'll probably also might, depending on the situation, might have a sit down and have a group discussion, so a group debrief together. So group talk session to talk about this bullying. So understanding why this is happening, why is this person going through the bullying. So because when it would raise up to management and a coach, we need to also gauge that, because once you say there is a bullying case that happens, so the perpetrators, they will also get penalized, or of course they'll have like disciplinary action so for causing the bullying. But it's also first we need to really go down deep down to understand that okay, this bullying is happening and it's affecting the athletes. And yeah, so there's no one right way to do this. It's just that, but you need to like handle it as it goes on so handle it not just with the athletes to manage their well-being, just to like talk them through the things and how they can manage the situation, but also with the management and the coach, and like this has happened, how are we going to manage it together.
I see. Thank you for the answer, miss. I hope you don't have to go through that, Sounds a lot of work.
Oh, don't know what will happen lah.
Yeah, don't know, right? But she'll be okay. So we have one last question, okay? By Kazu Caliber. Hello, what is the key advances for sportsmen you can suggest to recover after loss in competition or getting serious trauma? As example,
Okay, I'm trying to understand the question first. So what is the key advances for sportsmen? Okay. So what I think I'm trying to understand here the question. So it's like, well, how can we support the athletes to recover like after like losing, and how do we support them like after they experience a loss in competition? or getting serious trauma. So I would assume it's psychologically lah, so not physically, yeah. Or it could be physical, but it affects mentally also. So key advances, I would say, okay, everyone's different. Okay, I'm just gonna put it out there again. Everyone is different, so everyone has their own way of like processing loss, processing trauma. So it's up to us how we can engage with these athletes to understand what their thought process is like, what kind of like what is going through their minds when they are going through a loss or going through a like from losing a competition or like getting serious like trauma lah. So for example, maybe one athlete that I've worked with before. So losing a competition, okay, not so much a losing competition, but maybe making a lot of mistakes and very fearful of making mistakes. So a lot of times that we need to understand why the reason of like understanding this, the mistakes that they make and what is causing them to be so fearful and like making decisions in their own training, their own competition, right? And sometimes it can be a lot of things like pressure. They put expectations on themselves, and they have their own expectations from management that is causing them to be fearful of like making mistakes. So also same thing lah. So like recovering from loss of competition, maybe they might be fearful of making mistakes after losing because that the mistakes that they made maybe might have caused the team to lose or maybe themselves to lose. So it's about understanding the core reasons first, and then from there we can work on interventions and like skills that we can build together to help them to cope with the loss and just thinking about moving forward lah, just like improving themselves and how you can use that as a lesson and not as a punishment to move forward in their own career as athletes. I hope that answers your question.
I think it answered quite well, Miss, and it can even be applied to things outside of sports, like studies, exams, or maybe what else? An event that we have such a high expectation but we fail to achieve, right? So I think that advice is very universal.
Yeah, there are a lot of things also quite universal that can be applied also in real life.
But as for questions, that seems to be it. It was a lot of questions, and I think they all could benefit well from your answers, Miss.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm just checking like the mentee if anyone has asked any questions there, but the questions is the same this now.
Oh,
All right.
So for the students that are listening, please do not leave yet. You have to sign your attendance, okay, using the Microsoft Forms. So don't leave yet, okay? Okay. Okay. So that's about it, I think, since there are no more questions. Is there anything you would like to say, Miss Ning?
But yeah, I think that nothing much except like thank you so much for like tuning in and just thank you so much for inviting me today. 'Cause I think it's really fun to like engage with everyone. Everyone has been so interactive today, so proactive. It's something makes the session very enjoyable.
Yes, Miss, it was truly an honor to have you appear as our guest for this webinar because we don't get that much sports psychologists. In fact, our whole psychology department is quite new and fresh, so this is probably a first for them as well, and to me.
Okay.
It was quite
That's
insightful.
okay. That's good. Yeah. Hopefully there's something to take away lah from this session also.
100%, no doubt.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for today. Yeah. Have a good day. Have a good like rest of the week. Yeah.
Thank you, Miss. You too, Miss.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Thank you for watching our webinar and attending. So for the students, please fill in your attendance form so you may get attendance. Otherwise, you'll be counted as a non-attendee. So that being said, let's end the webinar. Thank you everyone for watching, and forgive me if I make any mistakes during my moderator sessions. Thank you.